Liberty in our lifetimes in a free state of our own. That's the vision. That's the dream. We are building it in New Hampshire. I'm Eric Gericke, your host and renegade statesman for the Porcupine Report. Welcome to your source for porcupine news and free-range conversation on matters of liberty. All right, let's hop into the show. Happy New Year, all you porcupines. This is your host, your renegade statesman, your executive director of the Free State Project, Eric Gericke, coming to you for the very first episode of 2025. It is episode 48, and we've got a good show for you today. We're going to be having a great conversation. Of course, it's New Year's Day when we are filming and releasing this episode. So what are we going to talk about? I think there's actually a lot to talk about, looking back at 2024, the year that has just passed, and looking forward to some exciting opportunities ahead. First, I just want to say I hope that you had a wonderful New Year's celebrations and Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and I don't know, whatever else you celebrate. I hope the holiday season has been magical for you, just as we discussed last week here in New Hampshire. Turns out New Hampshire is the state with the most Christmas cheer in all of among the 50 states. We're not just the freest, we are the most cheerful. And so that's great. But is that the holiday season is bridging into the new year. I'm excited for so many projects ahead. First of all, I want to say before I welcome our guest on that I really appreciate so many who have on our fundraising push towards the end of the year for the Free State Project, as we're working to draw down that $90,000 in matching funds that one generous new mover to the Free State has pledged. I'm so pleased to report that counting pledges that have come in and donations that have come in, we've reached our goal. So thank you to everyone who really helped actually make this one of the most successful fundraising years for the Free State Project so far. And that's all going to help us invest in new programs and new opportunities for the new year as we work to make sure we're hitting people every step along the way as people consider a move to join us in the Free State, whether they're just folks who are liberty lovers who are online, who've never heard of the Free State Project and stumble across our social media, or they're people who are getting engaged and curious, signing up for our newsletter and becoming subscribers to this show, to people who are taking the next step, visiting the Free State for many of our great events, from the Porcupine Freedom Festival to the New Hampshire Liberty Forum to all of the daily events that take place in New Hampshire all the time, year-round, to when folks finally make the move and we're there. Our Free State participants are there to welcome them with a welcome wagon, helping them unload their moving trucks into their new home, to those who are here and they're ready to get engaged and helping to bring more liberty lovers to the #1 state for freedom here in New Hampshire. We are investing in our programs for the new year to bring even more folks here to participate in our concentration strategy as we achieve liberty in our lifetime. So thank you to everyone who signed up to become a patron. And if you haven't signed up yet, which you can do for as little as $10 a month, you can do that, of course, at fsp.org/give. And we got a whole host of goodies that we give out to those who contribute financially to support the Free State Project. So you can learn all about it there. And thank you again to everyone who's already chipped in. All right. So for today's episode, we are, of course, going to be talking about looking backwards and looking forwards, 2024 and what we're excited about in 2025. And I could think of no better guest to come on the show to have this conversation with me than our very own President Emeritus of the Free State Project and Chairman of the Board, Carla and Eric. Carla, welcome to the Porcupine Report.
Hey, Eric, thank you so much for having me. And congratulations on closing that gap on the donations. I think that is really, really exciting. I think it puts us in a great space to forge into the new year. So I'm really excited to spend your money.
Well, we're looking forward to investing in some great programs for the new year. And I'm really grateful to everyone who is wanting to be a part of what we're doing by chipping in. And I look forward to engaging with all of our patrons in the new year. So anyway, thank you everyone out there, and including those who are hearing this right now and thinking, I want to be a patron. I want one of these cool lapel pins shipped to me with a personal thank you card from Eric Gericke. So they can do so at our website. But Carla, 2024 is over now.
It sure is.
It sure is. Looking backward, what are some of the great highlights that you think of from 2024?
Well, in terms of for the Free State Project here in New Hampshire, the first thing that springs to my mind is, of course, our wonderful events that we do over the course of the year. I loved how you were breaking down the different stages and sort of the different ways that people discover us, right? Like, first you have to hear about us, obviously. So, once you hear about the Free State Project, hopefully you're poking around online a little bit, go check out the website. But we know that people who come to visit, people who come to meet the community, and people who engage with the greater New Hampshire as well, because, ultimately it's just a fabulous place to live. It's a tourist destination. It's a fantastic place to come. It's fun. There's a ton of stuff to do, from canoeing and skiing and, snowshoeing, because it's winter time now, although we've had a pretty green winter so far. You've lived here a long time when you're like, please, can we have some snow?
So I will say, I did put out a social media post because everyone's saying, oh, I can't move to New Hampshire. There's too much snow, right? In southern New Hampshire, we haven't seen a lot of snow. I will say I did post something to our social media about how it's been a fairly green winter so far. We did get a little snow on Christmas, which was very nice. But I did hear from some of the folks up north saying, what are you talking about? We got plenty of snow. So it is obviously there's different regions.
But even that is a highlight of New Hampshire, candidly, right? We sort of talk about the North and the South here, right? So the Northerners, the people north of the Notch, call us down here in the south of New Hampshire the Flatlanders, right? But there is kind of a difference when you go through that notch. I mean, I would say the north part of New Hampshire feels more wild. It's definitely more rural. It's beautiful. I mean, it's just incredibly beautiful going through that notch. So that even that difference, right? Sort of knowing, oh, you could be on the coast and it's 5 degrees warmer than it is in the North Country. And because you're on the coast, it's a different flavor. Maybe those folks sail, so everyone who knows me by this stage knows, I'm playing my own little game of build our own country here in New Hampshire. But that's one of the appeals for people, is that it truly is kind of its own little country with different flavors, different areas, different microclimates and all of that. But to go back to your original question, when I look back over the year, certainly all our events stand out in my mind, and we can kind of run through them quickly if you want. But starting first, of course, with Porcupine Day, which is coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get tickets on sale pretty quickly for all of that, and we'll certainly be announcing that on the show when they're open. That'll be coming up in February, right?
Yeah, so that'll be February 2nd, technically Porcupine Day. And for folks who might not know the history, Porcupine Day is sort of like our in-state celebration of when we triggered the move way back in 2016. That was by far our biggest Liberty Forum. We had over 600 attendees because we had Edward Snowden as our keynote speaker, remotely, of course, from Russia at that stage, because it was right after he kind of got stuck there. But for Porcupine Day, it's that celebration of that sort of meeting that milestone of the original 20,000 signers, which was the original idea of the pledge. And we've moved away from all of that. But it's also important for historic movements to, of course, recognize and remember their history. So we started Porcupine Day sort of as this in-state celebration, but we'd love it if, new movers or the Liberty curious, as we call them, want to come up for it. So once we get those tickets on sale, we certainly would welcome anyone who wants to come hang out. Last year, 2024, we did it at the Mill Yard Museum, which is a beautiful little historical society museum in downtown Manchester. And as the name suggests, it's a museum about the mill yards here, which of course were the sort of original skyscrapers, the sideways skyscrapers, the mill buildings, which was the original industry up here, which was huge. New Hampshire actually was quite an economic engine back in the day. So we had that at the mill yard, very well attended, really fun event. I was kind of stressing before the time, I remember, because you had just come on board. And
I'm sure we're going to be stressing before this one, but I will remember this go around that as much as we were stressing out last year, are people going to come out? Are we going to have good attendance? It was so fabulously attended. We had so many, I think over like 100 people there. It was a very nice night at the Mill Yard.
Yeah, actually, I think we had 140. And in fact, the one that we're doing this year is capped at 120 because we are going to go throw some axes. So I thought, what would be fun? The 3rd of February, which is the technical date, is a Monday. So I was like, well, what can we do the Sunday before? That would seem kind of fun and get people together, maybe something like from 2 to 6 in the afternoon. So I had gone to a function that had the axe throwing and I was like, oh, this is really fun. Like what Free Stater doesn't love, sharp things. So we'll be doing it on the 2nd of February. It's a Sunday. It'll be from 2 to 6 out at the Rugged Axe in Manchester. And as you just said, of course, for people listening, tickets will be on sale probably by next week. I would say that gives us over a month. We are seeking sponsorship. So anyone who wants to kind of support us with a sponsorship, reach out to me or reach out to Eric and, he can talk to me behind the scenes. But yeah, so Porcupine Day is the first one that springs out in my mind, of course, because it's the one I'm the most hands-on with still. But maybe by next year. And then, of course, Liberty Forum and PorcFest. So maybe I'll turn it around just for a second. This was your first full year. And so maybe tell me a little bit about what stood out for you at either Porcupine Day or Liberty Forum.
Yeah, it really was my freshman year at the Free State Project. I've learned a lot. It's been so amazing getting to know all of the different communities and really find a sense of home here. Actually, we already talked about Porcupine Day, but right after Porcupine Day, we had the New Hampshire Liberty Forum. We actually, this year, we're shifting it back to April so it doesn't run up against Porcupine Day so much. I like that things are going to be spread out a bit. And the New Hampshire Liberty Forum was, I remember we were stressing about that too. We're always stressing about these events as we kind of
I think that's just
for them.
the nature of events, to be honest. I mean,
Right.
One of the things that I always think about with events for someone like me who's, I'm very daily driven, but, I also live a little in the moment. And one of the things I love about events is you cannot let the deadline slip. Like it's going to happen, which is what causes the stress, right? Like you're like, oh no, this is a non-movable deadline. This is happening, right? So that's why.
Yeah. Well, and of course, at Liberty Forum, we had some great speakers and great turnout. The theme for Liberty Forum this past year was Liberty Wins, which in New Hampshire, I think it really demonstrates that is the case. At least in New Hampshire, Liberty wins. Maybe not in other states, but in New Hampshire, it does. It was really nice to have, a lot of both kind of local speakers and speakers from away. I think one of the two of the big highlights for people was we had Mayor Glenn Jacobs come and was one of our keynote speakers. Him speaking about, for those who don't know Mayor Glenn Jacobs, he was not just the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, and maybe a future governor of Tennessee. We'll see. But he was also WWE superstar Kane. So people who are in wrestling know him from that. And he's just kind of a great kind of liberty. He's a liberty lover who reads Murray Rothbard and understands Ludwig von Mises. And he spoke about kind of the the challenges faced during the COVID era being a mayor and going against all of the conventional wisdom of the expert class in order to stand up for the freedoms and liberties of the people that he was elected by, and being proven right over time. And so I know that was very well received. And it was also great to welcome Tulsi Gabbard to Liberty Forum. She was also one of our keynote speakers. And what I particularly appreciated about Tulsi Gabbard being there was we got to ask her a question about Defend the Guard, which is, of course, a big policy priority for those who, for liberty lovers in New Hampshire and around the country who want a more constitutional foreign policy. And I think it was the first time she was on record on Defend the Guard, coming out in support of it. And I know our friends at Bring Our Troops Home, who are working this around the country, are really grateful to have kind of on record a great political leader in this country who now may go on to be the director of national intelligence if she can get past the Senate confirmation process and all the neocons there. To have her on record supporting Defend the Guard, I think that was great and excellent. And of course, there are so many other wonderful things to highlight from Liberty Forum, but those two stand out.
And those would be probably my top two to start with as well. Certainly, the value proposition really of Liberty Forum and PorcFest, of course, is come meet other Free Staters, come see what we're working on, see where your project can fit in. Maybe you have a great idea and you're like, oh, I'm just looking for the right people to partner with to get this going. So Liberty Forum is always great for that. And actually, as you were speaking and you mentioned both those people, I was just thinking that over the years, we've just had some really, really incredible, foresightful, by which I mean prescient people who, that's a word. That is a word.
It is a word. I will confirm.
Sometimes I'm translating in my head. I was like, no, I think it's a word. I worked for a company called Science, so sometimes it gets muddled. But we've had these incredible speakers over the years. We've had Ron Paul way back in the day, but he was at PorcFest this year as well. And of course, PorcFest is the Porcupine Freedom Festival. That one is the third week in June. We get thousands of people who come out. But, Kane probably came 10 years ago. Tulsi, I think this was her second, if not her third time. We had Vivek 2 years ago. We had RFK. There really is, and this is what I want folks to kind of comprehend, is if you are interested in liberty, if you're interested in libertarianism, if you're liberty curious, if you're into Austrian economics, if you understand monetary policy, if you hate wars, if you like to know that you're eating healthy food, etc., then New Hampshire is the place. Like, if you want to live a purpose-driven life that actually is like, it matters because it matters what you're doing. You're not just sheepling, merrily on, bawing, through your life, then this is the place to be. And these are the events to come to, so sometimes people are like, well, I'm going to wait for them to announce these great speakers. And I'm like, look, just trust us. It'll be an experience. Get your tickets early. That actually helps you. And as someone had did this a long time, it helps the organizers, right? Because there is this constant sort of thing of, we run our events responsibly. So we want our events to pay for themselves. So you got to sell the tickets, right? Like we're trying to bring some free market, principles here as well. And so folks listening, do yourself a favor, go out, get, your Liberty Forum tickets. They're on sale now. It's going to be at the Grapponi, I believe, in Concord this year.
That's right.
So that's a really nice conference center that we've never had an event at before, but I've certainly attended many events there over the years. I did a luncheon with Trump there, I think a couple of years ago was the last time I was there. But Josiah Bartlett, our big free market nonprofit center that runs here, does a lot of events there. Anyway, so it's like a big conference center, a big good thing to sponsor for people who are listening. But honestly, it would be awesome if we had a really, really big one, because what I want to see us do is get this next wave. To me, you represent the next generation of the Free State Project, right? That next wave. We did the original thing, proof of concept. We know it works. It works really well, and we can talk about maybe the election results next, right? But we know this model works. So it's kind of like, if you are out there, why are you waiting? Come, move here.
Well, and I certainly understand that many people, they've got things that anchor them where they are, and maybe they can't make the move immediately, but they can come and visit and get a taste of what's being built here. I know that that's what sold me on New Hampshire. It took me 10 years before I finally made the decision that I was going to cross the border and come to New Hampshire. But I will tell you, I think it's so symbolic what happened last night. New Year as 2024 ended and 2025 began, right? In New Hampshire, we've always advertised New Hampshire as having no income tax, and that's been technically true, except with a little asterisk that there was a tax on interest and dividends, so like investments, and that's gone now. Like that has been phased out. I think that it was one of the things that really hung in the balance, depending on what happened in the elections this year, because you had the Democrat candidate Joyce Craig saying she would never impose an income tax on the people of New Hampshire, but she was going to restore the interest and dividends tax.
Right.
So
and for what it's worth, I mean, that IND tax was introduced, I believe, back in like 1923. So it's been around for 100 years. And I think it's important for people to understand it's actually perverse incentives, right? Because why are you taxing someone's savings? Like, we want to, as a society, encourage people to save, to not live beyond their means, to really think about, their lives, to not basically act like the government, just kind of do the opposite of what the government tells you to do. Because clearly, if we were all running our households the same way the federal government runs its budget, when you think about it, what would the federal government's credit score be? Like, why are we all judged on our credit scores? And then we have, the people who so-called represent us, and they're just, the math don't make no sense no more. But the interest and dividends tax is really exciting, because we can now say we are, truly income tax-free state. Of course, New Hampshire has no sales tax either. And we have good trust laws. That's actually one of my missions for this year, is to really start to better understand the trust laws in New Hampshire. Because I think what is happening over time, although, the Democrats will explain this as a negative, it is becoming a state where there is a appetite for wealth protection, i.e., hey, maybe you're allowed to keep your own money. And I don't know why anyone in the world, unless you're a card-carrying commie, would mind if you work hard for your money, you should be able to keep it. But nah. See, that's not how the government thinks it should work, right? So yeah, we're totally, it was phased out. It was kind of incremental. So that was a good approach, right? We have seen that as a success up at the State House. Is, I see one of my jobs is I'll just put things out there, right? So like, I'm building my own country. We're over here. And then the great Free Staters who do get elected, and maybe you can tell folks what those numbers were. I mean, we had a lot of success in this last election.
Well, first I wanted to say, as the interest and dividends tax is killed in New Hampshire, and now it's dead and buried, and it ain't coming back. There is officially no personal income tax in New Hampshire. At the same time, at the same moment, across the border, in the other state that I love, in Maine, which was already one of the highest tax states in America, they enacted, it went into effect, one of the biggest tax hikes on working people in state history, with a payroll tax hike of 1%. So that's 1% additional taxes you're paying on top of already all the taxes you're paying in Maine, right? And so it's the contrast is, I think there's a certain I guess poetry to it, a sad poetry, right? That the free state is becoming freer, and and vacation land is becoming taxation land, you know.
And of course, Massachusetts is already Taxachusetts. Poor Connecticut, you know, they fell for that trick where they were like, oh, we'll replace the property tax with a slight little income tax, and then it'll all be good. And poor Connecticut was like, man, now we got all the taxes: personal income tax, state tax, city tax, street tax, you know, chicken tax. Like, they're just getting taxed really out the yazoo. So I guess in some ways, anyone who is in New England, it's an easy ask than to come to one of our events, right? Like, that's drivable. I mean, I love it when people move, and they have, from Alaska, from Hawaii, from California. We'll welcome all of you too. We're sorry you have to, live under the silly socialists, but there is an escape plan.
Yeah, well, and that's one thing I'm looking forward to in the new year is, in our outreach efforts to liberty lovers. Obviously, we're always trying to recruit generally from everywhere, right? We get so many people who come from great liberty-loving libertarians who come from California on the other side of the country, or people who come, through legal processes from other parts of the world, and that's wonderful. But where's the low-hanging fruit? I think I'm looking forward to the new year being able to focus a lot more on the states around us in New England, because people argue with us all the time. Oh, you say New Hampshire is the freest state in America. I mean, it is. It's measured. It's objective. It is. But people might argue. Some people argue, well, Florida's pretty free, or Wyoming is pretty free, or what about this state or that state? And certainly I think there are states in different regions of the country that are relatively free compared to others. But there is no contest between New Hampshire and the rest of New England. Like you look at New Hampshire versus Maine, Massachusetts, Vermont, Connecticut. I don't know. Is New Jersey considered part of New England?
Probably Rhode Island. Yeah.
Rhode Island, right? Or even just kind of the things just beyond the New.
Suspiciously, all the places with drones.
Or New York State, which is just outside of New England, but is ranked the number one least free state in America. Right. The Empire State. Go figure. Like, these are all places where it's not very far for people to visit or to move to New Hampshire. And there's no hope for liberty in these states. So maybe there's some in Maine. Maybe they can turn it around. I don't want to.
Well, I say it jokingly, but certainly you've gotten on board at least with the notion of it, where it's like, Maine has a really long coastline, and, as we extend the free state, I would like to see us sort of maybe extend up into the Maine area. Of course, all of these things eventually, with all my crazy ideas, let's just, say two things. I do believe in consent. So, like, no one's going to be dragged along kicking and screaming, and property rights are important. So, for folks also listening, I'll sell you a house. I'm just going to put that little pitch in there in the middle here. But talking about that pipeline, right? So people coming to our events, people kind of meeting our community, donating so that they get proper access or extra access to this patrons group, right? Even the patrons group was something new that was introduced in 24. And I believe, you're working to expand that in 2025. While we're just on the events as well, I did want to mention, there was also the blockchain event that the Fentons throw in the fall months, right? So
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so that was also really great. It's very casual in the sense that it's not like a big hoopla. It's on their personal farm out in Durham. It's a beautiful location. I kind of wish I had bought that farm. You know what I mean? It's 50 acres on the mouth of the Oyster River that they got for a pretty good deal. And anyone who's listening, please know this: supply and demand dictates that, sadly, even as we cut taxes, New Hampshire will become more expensive because it will become more desirable. So don't wait. To the extent people can, really start to put these plans in motion, because, it may take you 3 years to get here, or 10 years like Eric. But, it's step by step by step. So the blockchain one, that's kind of cool because we get folks out, maybe more from Massachusetts, that sort of MIT crowd. And then, of course, all the crypto, I was going to say crypto bros, but I think that sounds toxic at this stage. I just mean like crypto bros and hoes, if we want to make it, gender neutral. But
I think some people might say the hose part is more toxic. I don't know.
Is it?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know, but all 6 women in the crypto industry, I think, can handle it.
Right.
But we do have a big crypto community here, and so we have that great event too. Those are our big events, but of course the FSP calendar. Folks can go to fsp.org/calendar. And that is, where everything is laid out. So there's like a weekly crypto meetup, right? And all these things that just kind of happen. Bardo, the off the grid folks and the homesteaders, they do things. We have North Country meetups. There's MVP, right? So basically there's always something going on. But last year, the big thing that went on, of course, was this crazy election we had. So
a lot really seemed to hang in the balance there. I know in New Hampshire, and we can talk about the federal stuff if we want to. Everyone always talks about the federal stuff, but
who cares?
Right. What's often missed, and what's so much more important, is what is happening in your state capital. And a lot hung in the balance in New Hampshire. The Republicans, and again, we're nonpartisan. I'm not saying I don't love Republicans. I love Liberty people who tend to run as Republicans and win in New Hampshire. But Republicans had a razor thin majority in the House of Representatives. And there were concerns.
Like if someone sneezed, they would lose a vote. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was like 4 vote majority out of 400 members, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like many days, depending on who showed up, Democrats practically had the majority in effect. And there was a real concern that could slide away. And of course, the New Hampshire House of Representatives, that's where all of the Liberty folks were getting elected. It had become, I would argue, the most libertarian political body in the world. And if that Republican majority slipped away, then all of our Liberty champions would be relegated to a minority where they would be totally dismissed, totally ignored. They'd be relegated to the backbench, and Democrats would be running the show again, and expanding statism instead of liberty.
And let's talk about that Democratic expanding statism. Last time, I mean, they introduced I don't remember the number, but it was astronomical, 180 million, or maybe it was 1.8 billion. I forget. There were lots of zeros in new taxes. So that really did matter, right? So getting this, I cut you off, I'm sorry, but we've got a trifecta, right? So the House is in Republican, yes. I mean, I ran as a Republican, so I'll just say we for this, but Republicans won the House, the Senate, and the governorship. Now, we can quibble the governorship. I don't think she's libertarian. She is funded by big corporations, BlackRock, BAE, there's, stuff there. So I think we got to keep an eye on that as much as we want to be super excited about it.
I'm sure there will be conflicts with Governor-elect Ayotte over the next 2 years, but there also will be areas of common ground.
Yes. And honestly, that's politics, right? Yep. But I mean, in the House, which is one of the largest legislative bodies in the world, in the English-speaking world, 400 seats there. There are 98, I think you said. Oh, I say 100. I like to round up.
Yeah, 93 Liberty folks in the House and 5 in the Senate. So about 20% of each body is now libertarian.
And that is huge. that is, especially in the Senate, because you had brought up Defend the Guard earlier, and Defend the Guard actually passed in the New Hampshire House. It was the only house and legislative body, I believe, where it passed.
Or it's the
Or
only
it was the first one, I'm sorry.
Or it's the only lower chamber where it's passed.
Okay.
It has passed in the Arizona Senate and the Idaho Senate, but not in their lower chambers.
So basically we were very optimistic because it had passed the House, where again, 400 people. So like, you got to actually build consensus there, right? Like that was something where there were people on both sides of the issue, because anti-war shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should be, I mean, it should just literally be like, how is there anyone on the other side of that equation, is the part I just simply do not understand.
It is so sad to me how, like, it's like the anti-war movement, it's almost like a partisan teeter-totter, right?
I know.
It's like, I remember being so excited when I finally like realized that the wars were bullshit, and I could go to my liberal friends and finally admit to them, hat in hand, it's like, hey, you were right. You were right. These wars were bullshit and we shouldn't be fighting them. And now we can stand together and oppose the wars. But by the time I went to them, they were like, actually, can
we take a little side quest here?
Wars now. Yeah, go ahead. What's the side quest?
The side quest is exactly that. And I think is how those shifting goalposts happen. How do we literally flip issues from party to party? And I'll tell you how it is. It's through propaganda, and it's through people not sticking to their principles. Because what a principle does is, it's like, it doesn't matter who's in power. We as humans should all agree X, right? And what you see is this manipulation that happens, and it's happening faster and faster because of technology and because of social media, right? It's both the propaganda is out of control, but also being arrested much faster. So I do think there's going to be a very interesting kind of thing maybe in the next 2 years. We'll see if X and free speech manages to lift us out of global stupidity. We'll see, right? But I think it is important, because we see it even in our own community, where people are kind of like, and I get it, right? Like, politics is a different game. But I think, one of the things that's important for us to do is we're kind of we're the blanking on the word, but we're kind of like the stalwarts, or like the line in the sand, or like we should really be the guards, like a vanguard maybe. Well, vanguard's leading it out, but like we need to remember that it is important to stick to our principles, because that's how we actually institute good governance in New Hampshire, right? Like, I don't think we're going to fix DC. I thought this last week. As an immigrant and an American citizen, I will tell you, it amused me a lot to just watch this HB1 versus, we don't want any foreigners. And if you're not a third generation American, you better not be working at Market Basket kind of people. And I'm just looking at that and I'm like, how is it possible that Democrats have become pro-war? How is it possible that libertarians have become like people being employed? Like stacking your groceries. So anyway, that is my side quest.
We could have a whole episode on just that. I mean, I will say it is one of the things I've often kind of struggled with, and I oftentimes kind of hear all the sides, but it's like sometimes it is challenging, where it's, on the one hand, I know when I was working on a lot of these issues in Maine, because we had a huge problem with all the asylum seekers coming to Maine, which, look, hey, I get it. If you're genuinely seeking asylum, sometimes an asylum seeker, though, is just seeking job opportunities, but or sometimes welfare opportunities, right? I would just say, like, look, we should not be funding welfare for non-citizens. This is not something taxpayers should be paying for. If people want to give to charities, they have a right to do that with their own money. But then it's like, but ultimately one of the challenges is is when people are here in some kind of legal capacity, and we have restrictions on their ability to work. It's like, okay, we don't want them to get welfare. I don't want them to get welfare, But if we don't want them to be able to work either, like what are we supposed to do?
We've come full circle on perverse incentives, right? From the start of this, where we were talking with the interest and dividends tax.
Yeah.
That is why first principles actually are so important, because it is the question of going back to, why are we doing this? Like, I think we're just at a stage in the world. The world has become both extremely complex and extremely stupid at the same time. And maybe those two things have something to do with each other. But if we can kind of reset people's minds, I mean, we are at the start of the year, so it kind of goes, oh, what do we want from 2025, right? Like, I want health and success for everyone I know, right? Okay, that takes some work, but you go. I'm like,
well, let me ask you, Carla, do you have, are you a resolutions kind of person? Do you make New Year's resolutions?
I do.
Do you have any you would share, or at least any hopes or expectations for the new year?
Yeah. So, I mean, I usually pick a word for my year to kind of sort of center my life around, so in the past I've had vibrance, 1 year, I forget, but my word for this year is create, because I think that we are so mired in criticizing and naysaying and, this punditry, and everyone's just literally hurling insults at each other like it's some kind of intelligence that's happening. I'm like, oh my God, can you all not see we are in this is on X in particular, but we are in a sandbox or a play box from like primary school or kindergarten or whatever, and everyone's just like hurling name calling and everything. And I'm like, how do we counteract that? And I was like, I think you do it through creation, right? Yeah. You should criticize through creation, because what we're doing is we spend all our time. It's so bizarre to me. I mean, I don't know, now I'm off on another tangent, but I was like, we're anti-state, but we're actually pro-markets. And I'm not seeing a lot of the pro-markets language and and that goes back to propaganda and messaging and all of that, right? And pro-markets is pro-creation. It's sort of not exactly in that sense, but, actually maybe as well, right? So my word of the year is creation. I've set only one resolution for this year, which actually came out of how I quit alcohol, which was I made one promise to myself. I didn't really tell anyone, so I'm breaking that one now. And then I just kept that one promise to myself, which was I'm going to stop drinking alcohol. And I did, right? Back in 2017. So for this year, I'm doing a living experiment on X. I'm going to post a video every day for 365 days. People who know me, it could be great. It could be insane. I usually lose my train of thought at least once. But my resolution for this year is just to do that one thing. Now, of course, I have a huge, busy, crazy, interesting life. So I am doing like literally a jazillion other things. But that was the thing I wanted to do for myself, because, they say do things that scare you. And I find that terrifying. But I also think it's time to make sure that, I think it was when Elon said, hey, can we bring some more happiness or more good content and love and stuff, to the platform? And I was like, I can do that. Yeah. There's where I can add some value this year. So how about you?
Well, first I want to say, responding to kind of this idea of create, and which it reminds me very much of what our friend Dennis says of build, don't bitch, right? Like there are so many things to complain about in the world. There's so many critiques we can have of how other people are trying to build projects and how they're not doing it right, or they're not. It's like, go out and demonstrate. If there's a better way to do it, go embody that, go and do it, go and build it, build something better than the people that you think are doing it wrong. And the proof that you are right will be in the doing of it. and the success that you will find doing that. So I think that's a very, very healthy kind of resolution to build on. And for me, I mean, I suppose in the new year, in this role leading the Free State Project, I really would like to see one, strengthening our pipeline of getting kind of new people to explore and learn about the Free State, and welcome more movers in to further our concentration strategy. But also, like, within the community itself, you talk about some of kind of the discord that happens. And I think this happens, I think a lot about the episode I had of the Porcupine Report I don't know how long ago now, several episodes ago. We had Andrew Heaton on talking about his book on tribalism. Tribalism is Dumb, which is a great book. I recommend it to everyone. A lot of things to process and think about. And he talks about, there's when groups get past a certain size, and we are there, like we thousands of people have moved, but like the natural group size is like 150, and beyond that, people start to become abstractions, and you need kind of certain things to kind of bring people together beyond just here's the 150 people I know and empathize with. Things that can bring people together are common cause, common ideology, which we have. Like, we have had the non-aggression principle. We have a deep philosophy of libertarianism that we can draw upon to remind us all what we're working for, what we are working towards, trying to build together, even if we disagree on, I don't know, immigration or Zionism or this or that. Like, we have a common vision we are working towards, and we could do to remind ourselves of that. And also, the other thing that can bring people together in larger groups is also remembering our common adversaries. And our adversaries, I don't see our adversaries as our neighbors or other people in the liberty movement, even if they have disagreements on kind of how to do this or how to do that. I see our adversary is the imperial system. It is centered in Washington, D.C., the imperial city. That is what we are fighting against in order to build our free society, free of kind of the controls of this imperial state. So I want to, in the new year, do more to kind of try to help rally our community around the things that we share, both in what we are fighting for and what we are fighting against. And, I support all kinds of debate and everything within our communities. There are so many issues to debate, and debate can be very healthy and thought-provoking. But yeah, I just hope that people will approach each other in good faith.
Just to clarify, for me, I'm fine with debate. I'm fine with disagreement, dialogue, conversations, all of that stuff. The part I'm actually worried, I don't think is the right word. My concern lies with mindset, where some of the messaging I'm seeing from people is actually just plain hateful, like hateful against other humans. And that is a problem, because that is actually also a propaganda tactic, right? Dehumanizing your enemy. And I believe, and I think this is sort of subscribed in the non-aggression principle, right, is you should, and it's not pacifism, right? This is really important. I have my guns. I know how to use them. Like, we're gathering together for reasons, like all of those things that we all know that might be, unspoken. But it's when people are just saying nasty things about other humans. That is where my call is, where I'm like, hey guys, let's just recheck our mindsets. Like, if we all take 2025 and we kind of do the reset to, I want to live my life with a love forward, liberty forward, positive vibe. I want people to be attracted to what we are doing here, right? So you want to put out the vibe of the people you want to attract to come here, to build our community. And I'm not saying, we don't get to argue about stuff, but I think if your note, if your vibe, if your frequency is like kind of hate, that is not great. Like, who wants to build from hate? I don't. It's too hard. I want to build from love. I want to bring people who want to build, who are aspirational, who are inspired by what we're doing. Like, if you're watching like someone like Elon, right, and going, man, would I go to Mars one day? you're one of us, right? And if you're like, hey, what would life on Mars be like one day? You're one of us. If you have asked ChatGPT, hey, if I was building my own little country on Mars, or perhaps in New Hampshire, what would that look like? How would we do it, right? Like the future here is so bright, because I want people who love life to come here and be like, how can I make my life better? How can we put our principles into play in a way where we actually exemplify the best, right? Like, I don't want to exemplify hate. Who the fuck is that? Get out. I want to build a place that is beautiful, that is prosperous, that is peaceful. And I want people who hear that call to come and to help us build.
Well, and I will say, I mean, I think that is the best of the Free State community. I mean, I think it's
absolutely
so many welcome wagons I've been a part of over the course of this past year. People just showing up when a new mover arrives, helping unpack their moving truck, put all their furniture in, like giving that warm, kind of loving, kind of welcome. Hey, you're here, and there's a community here for you. And of course, all of those people, for the most part, on those welcome wagons are just people who are paying it forward because it was done for them, right?
Yeah.
I know I appreciated on my moving day, like how many, boy, my moving
but it was
truck,
a weekday, and I got there late, and his truck was already unpacked. Like, you had like 30 people on a weekday.
yeah. I think it was. I've been to many welcome wagons. I think for for the middle of a weekday, I think I was blown away with how many people came out to welcome me. So and so many of those folks have become great friends. And of course, a lot of them, some came from very far away. I will be honest. Like I was, but also a lot were just right here in the Seacoast region where I've settled. I know you're in the Manchester region, and there's just these great pockets of just really positive doers and builders in every region. And
yeah, and just to be clear, I mean, I am reacting to more like a frequency I'm seeing on social media than specifically like Free Staters, but definitely in the sort of social media spheres. Like there is a, and oh God, sorry.
Well, while you do that, I will say, I do think that social media is like, our primate brains aren't quite like adapted for social media yet. Like, there's certain things when you see a person like in person, you usually treat people with at least some degree of respect. I think that when you see a person face to face, even if you strongly disagree with them, you're not like usually like shouting at them and just calling them names, right? But on social media, where we're just kind of looking at a computer screen, and the person themselves is not really a person in our minds; they're an abstraction. We can intellectually understand that there is a person on the other side of the keyboard, but our lizard brains, I don't think, quite get that, and so we don't quite behave. But I also look back at all of human history, right? It used to be we just like waged war and mass murder. I mean, I guess we still do that to some degree, but not like it used to be. I think that we've learned how to be a little bit more civilized with each other over time in the real world. But the digital space is so new to us, and I'm confident that eventually, as human beings, we'll figure out some how to be civilized on the internet.
Well, I think it's also as we better understand human consciousness and maybe fully understand, and the science backs us up, that actually your thoughts and your deeds actually create your reality. So that's also an important factor is, you read all these things online, and I'm like, oh my God, is the street burning down? Like as I walked out, and then you realize, oh no, the quality of your life is actually incredible. You can stream all the art in the world. You have all the knowledge you could possibly want at your fingertips. You can walk out your door if you're in New Hampshire and be perfectly safe. It is an incredibly beautiful, safe place. You can go walk in the woods. You can forage mushrooms. Like the life here is really good. Would I want to be living in downtown San Francisco now? No. I left for a reason, right? So, I think it's just important in our community really to just do that sort of, okay, maybe you don't set resolutions, but what could you just sort of adopt into your life going forward, right? And it is trying to control your own thoughts. And that starts with like not being negative all the time. And this will sound very Pollyanna, but the truth of it is it's up to you. It's up to the way you think about things. And so one of the truly beautiful things about the Free State Project is, again, that it is so aspirational, right? Like it's built into the model of it. You are making a choice to move to a place, to come and institute your life that you choose, right? And that is very empowering and
very American. It's what our ancestors did, right? All at one point, unless you're descended from Native Americans, like all of your ancestors.
I'm also like, be careful with this anti-immigrant stuff, because Granite Staters could start being like, yo, who are these colonizers? Which of course we do here, and I've heard that for almost 20 years now. But it's like, look at the holistic whole picture. Don't just pick this little thing that someone is manipulating you on. And I've been around the block long enough where I'm like, I'm just seeing the same things. I'm like, oh my God, this is literally what they were saying under Bill Clinton, and then you just watch it. So everyone should be mindful, I think, is the note I'm going to leave this on.
All right. We are at the end of the hour. Carla, final thought.
Be mindful.
Be mindful. All right. That's our, for the new year. Be mindful, be joyous, live in liberty. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And Carla, thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you. And thanks for indulging my rambling, as always.
All right, everyone, that's the show. A reminder, please look forward to the Porcupine Day coming up in February, the New Hampshire Liberty Forum coming up in April, and the Porcupine Freedom Festival coming up in June. Tickets are already on sale for Liberty Forum and the Porcupine Freedom Festival. You can find those at fsp.org, and you'll find links to their own standalone websites for Liberty Forum and PorcFest. And again, thank you. Well, thank you to everyone. This 2024 was a major year for me. I learned so much coming into the Free State movement and the communities here, and I received such a warm welcome. And I'm really honored to be a part of this Free State project with all of you. So thank you. And thank you to all of our patrons. Thank you to all of our participants. Thank you to all of our volunteers for making 2024 one for the history books of the Free State Project. And we're going to do even greater things together in 2025. Let's keep establishing liberty in our lifetimes, one new mover at a time. And furthermore, my opinion is the Federal Reserve should be destroyed.